to HMS Collingwood, those of you who have come in from outside. Welcome to this martial arts display, which we hope will be more successful than our attempt to play the national anthem over the tannoy system. Can I begin, please, by introducing to you the stars who will be in charge of the various displays this evening. First of all, Mr. Mick Dewey, Shotokan 4th Dan and chairman of the South of England Karate Union. He hosted the Japanese Navy display in the Mountbatten Centre. From HMS Collingwood, Mr. Jed Kerslake, also from the RC Chaplains Department, Shotokan 1st Dan instructor in the Collingwood Karate Club. Lieutenant Graham Hockley, the fencing instructor of the HMS Collingwood Fencing Club. Petty Officer Dave Tons, Kyokushinkai Karate 1st Dan instructor based in the Vincent Club. Lieutenant Commander Brian Wheeler, 1st Dan instructor of the Portsmouth Command Judo Club. Mr. Bill Heffer, 5th Dan instructor and the originator of the Zen Jitsu Ryu style. He holds a senior position in the World Jiu-Jitsu Council and is a member of the Martial Arts Commission for Great Britain. Mr. Dave Ayres, the 4th Dan from the Portsmouth Aikido Club, who aided Mr. Mick Dewey with the Japanese naval display in the summer 1983. And although he hasn't actually arrived yet, later on this evening we'll be seeing Mr. Richard Lockwood, who is the Kung Fu instructor who will be in charge of the Kung Fu display later on. Now, this evening you will be seeing 7 types of human fighting skills, 6 of them based on unarmed self-defense techniques, and the 7th is, of course, fencing. Each display will be performed with the emphasis on the particular features that make it distinct from the other martial arts. Martial arts are not sports of mindless violence. Flowing through every serious martial art is a strict code of conduct, akin to the code of chivalry of the medieval knights of Europe. Of the 7 arts which will be displayed this evening, 6 are of Eastern origin, Japanese and Chinese. The 7th, fencing, is very firmly rooted in the West. Whereas in Europe, the firearm quickly replaced more close forms of combat. In the East, the need to be a skilled, unarmed self-defense combatter remained for many later years than it did in the case of the West. And these self-defense techniques were kept alive within the individual traditions of the warrior class. Such arts formed a fundamental part of a clan's identity in both China and Japan, and the more refined techniques were jealously guarded secrets. Many philosophical and religious principles became interwoven with them. This occurred to such an extent that the perfection of such martial skills and religious or philosophical enlightenment went hand in hand. Today, with the study of these arts in Europe, much of the philosophical ideas have been left behind. But such fundamental principles as humility, respect for others, discipline, and self-control are considered a vital part of the development of any student of the martial arts. Through these displays tonight, then, we hope to both entertain you and to share with you some of the skills that have been acquired through the hard and diligent training of the students. We also hope to share with you our insights into the benefits of studying the martial arts for young men and women of Her Majesty's Armed Services, and particularly of the Royal Navy. And finally, although there's a chance you to spend some money on nutty and so forth at half-time, we also hope to make a bit of profit out of you, which will go mainly to the King George V Fund for Sailors. And now for the first display of the Shotokan style of karate. Can I hand you over now, please, to the Master of Ceremonies for that, Mr. Mervyn O'Donnell.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have the HMS Collingwood Karate Club initially, who will be demonstrating basic techniques. The form of this demonstration very much in the format of a basic training session. Hence, they'll be counting by the senior instructor, Phil Bryant.
Step forward, Jordan will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step back, activity, right and block. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And now on to the kick side of things.
Step forward. May Gary. Front snap kick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step back. Get in variety. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yummy.
Well, that demonstrates the basic punches both to the face and body,
Down face.
and also suitable blocks. We're now going to see the basic form of sparring practice, Gohon Kumite, 5-attack sparring. All of this is rehearsed, both the attacker and the defender know what's going to happen, and its object is to practice the timing, the speed, and the actual application of the technique.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
On the counter-attack, you're not allowed to hit, though.
3, 4, 5. Mate. Upside down, get in right, mate. Get down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The object isn't just brute strength, technique vital.
Right, mate. Get down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get mate. Ready?
Well, although kata karate can often appear to be very physical and rather frightening in its aspect, kata, what we're to see now,
Okay.
preset sequence of moves, both defensive and attack, plays a very important part in our training.
Get down.
Hei Nidan.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1.
And that's Hei Nidan, one of our basic kata. That concludes the HMS Collingwood display. As I said at the beginning, the emphasis there was on basic training, and we're now going to have the Portsmouth Karate Club, led by Nick Dewey, 4th Dan, and ranging down to 1st Dan black belts, who are going to demonstrate more advanced techniques, more advanced kata, and certainly more advanced techniques in application. We have a number of national champions, in fact, here tonight. The first item is Sorchin Kata, a 3rd Dan kata, particularly advanced in its techniques, and this is on a synchronized basis. Sorchin Kata.
Sorchin. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Wait. Get on.
Well, that was Sorchin Kata. As I say, a particularly advanced kata. We move on to a secondary stage in kumite practice, that's fighting practice. We have here Jim Hill and Andy Marsh, both 2nd Dans. This is again pre-rehearsed, but it's a little bit more powerful in its attack and defensive moves. Again, control, very important part. The object of all these counters is to stop at contact, or certainly very short of it. Nippon Kumite. The next stage in fighting practice is termed Ju-Ippon Kumite, and this is more of a free sparring, still controlled. The attacks are still known in advance, but certainly more advanced in its methods. Here we have Dave Hinks, third dan, and Bob Knight, second dan. Ju-Ippon Kumite. Again, you notice that controlling all the counters, very, very important. Well, I hope there you've appreciated the very tremendous difference between basic sparring practice, the secondary stage, Kihon Ippon Kumite, and the final Ju-Ippon Kumite. Definitely gets progressively more hard. We now move on to bow staff defence. Brian Smith, second dan, and Mick Gunner, first dan. Brian, incidentally, was in the team that came second, the Team Kata, at the recent national championships, and is in fact the reigning CQ Kumite and Kata champion. Brian, the lucky man without the stick. I think he's had enough. We now have Alan Pinhorn, another member of the team that came second recently at the National Championships, is performing Niji Shiho, another advanced kata, particularly noted for its timing and dynamic movements. Niji Shiho. As I mentioned previously, kata forms a particularly important part of the Shotokan form of training. And to conclude our demonstration, we have Mick Dewey, 4th Dan, demonstrating Tameshwara, wood breaking, often thought to be the main emphasis of karate, but its real object is to show the power in the techniques themselves. We'll move straight on from Tameshwara into a defensive situation, which I think fairly self-explanatory. Notice there is a little bit of care as to how they drop to the ground. Despite all the apparent aggression and all the rest of it there, discipline, etiquette, self-control are the most important parts of this art, as with all karate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mervyn O'Donnell and the Portsmouth and Collingwood Karate Clubs. We come next to fencing, which, unlike the other sports being shown tonight, is distinctly European in origin, and in common with judo is also an Olympic sport. But it's not always been so. This is perhaps understandable when one considers fencing's parentage. On the one hand, it's evolved from those military skills that were necessary for any sword-armed soldier to achieve. On the other hand, it's also descended from the gentlemanly accomplishment of dueling. There have been rules governing dueling for hundreds of years and drill books covering military swordsmanship for nearly as long. Needless to say, fencers weren't always very ruly, and many civic authorities took a dim view of their actions. In the reign of the First Elizabeth, all fencing masters were banned altogether from the city of London at one time, and you can understand why when we remember that the phrase "one in the eye for you" actually derives from a fencing movement of the day. By the middle of the last century, dueling, although still fairly endemic, was beginning to develop as a sport, but the rules varied from country to country. In the 19th century, it was a fully fledged sport, one of those in the new Olympic movements. To achieve this, it had its first set of internationally accepted rules. The modern fencing bouts, which we will shortly see, are all fought under supervision of a president on a playing area known as a pieste, which measures 14 meters by 2 meters. The winner of a bout is the first fencer to score 5 hits against his opponent. And for commentary on this, I will now hand you over to the fencing instructor in Collingwood, Graham Hockley.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The first weapon we're going to demonstrate this evening is known as the foil. It used to be called the court sword, which was the only permissible sword that could be worn in European courts in the late 1700s. And it's perhaps to this sword that we owe fencing as a sport. The young bloods of those days, being bored and looking for something to do, used the foil to practice their dueling techniques. And for this reason, as it was a practice weapon, it has some of the more strict rules of any of the fencing weapons. If we look now at a modern fencer, the target area is shown as the body, and it is the part that you can probably see as a shiny part on the fencer's body. This is a conducting jacket, and this allows the electronics behind me to sort out the difference between an off-target hit, which is shown as a white light, and an on-target hit, which will be shown as a coloured light. Tonight's bouts won't be to the full length because of time. We're only going to show you the first of 3 hits in each of the 3 weapons. I shall act as the president. My 2 fencers here are now ready. On guard, gentlemen. You ready? Fence. Halt. We have a double hit here, and because this is a practice weapon, the style now determines the winner. In this case, the man with the straight arm, which was the gentleman in the grey trousers on my left. So against my right, 1 hit. On guard, gentlemen. You ready? Fence. Halt. 1 hit only. This time, against my left. On guard, you ready? Fence. Halt. As the fencer in grey came in for his final attack, there was a stop-hit attack from the right against the left, 2-2-1. On guard, gentlemen. You ready? Fence. Halt. Against my right. Fencer on my right seems to have gone to sleep. Score is now 2-2. On guard. You ready? Fence. Halt. Both fencers came in and attacked. Both blades were flat. This is a point scoring weapon, so the point was against the fencer on my right, and he loses by 3-2. While the fencers are just changing round, I'll tell you a little bit about the next weapon we're going to see. This is, I'm ashamed to say, I have a favourite. This is my favourite weapon. It's called the épée, and it was the dueling weapon of the 19th and latter part of the 18th century, particularly in France, widely used both then and in 1930s movies. Unlike the foil, because this one is meant to do business, the entire body is the target. Now, you might tend to think this will lead to faster moving and harder hitting fencing. This is not the case, because as soon as you move from the on-guard position, you will expose part of your target to your opponent. A good épéiste should be able to hit a 5p coin at 6 feet, having it as it falls through the air. Now, unfortunately, none of us are up to that tonight, so you'll have to make do with what we have. As there is no off-target in this weapon, you will only be using the green and the red lights. Also, should we get a double hit in this one, just as for real, if both fencers were wounded, so in épée, both hits count. As well as being used for fencing, this weapon is also used in the modern pentathlon, where they will fight to one hit, and the first man to score a hit wins. And a modern pentathlete may expect to fight up to 100 bouts in one day's competition. So you can see it's something of an endurance event. On guard, gentlemen. Are you ready? Fence. Notice the arm is much straighter to keep the target hidden by the larger guard. Halt, one hit only against right. On guard, gentlemen. You ready? Fence. Halt. There again was one hit, this time against the left. On guard, you ready? Yes. Fence. Halt. This is a double hit, and because it is the dueling weapon, both fencers are considered to have lost a point. On guard, you ready? Fence. Halt. Again a double hit. In a competition we would now fight on, but because time is short, I'll hope you allow both fencers a victory. Thank you. Now the final weapon we have to demonstrate, which makes up the trio of Olympic fencing weapons, is the sabre. This one is based on the old cavalry weapon, which was the standard arm for cavalry, in fact for nearly all cavalry, until they were moved into tanks. The target area for this weapon is different to the previous two. It is the whole body above the waist. If you think about it, this is logical with a cavalry weapon. By the time you got close enough to use it, you couldn't see the other chap's legs because his horse was in the way. So, although this is fought on foot, the target is still above the waist. Until 1950, the fencing sabre looked very much like a modern army officer's sword, very heavy and very large. And hits could be scored either with the blade or by using the guard as a knuckle duster. In 1950, this was considered to be too ungentlemanly, and the modern light Italian sabre came in. Hits can still be scored with any part of the blade and with the point. Having said that, for that very reason, it's not electrified, so it makes it considerably more difficult to judge. Normally, for a sabre bout, we would have, in addition to the president, 4 judges, 2 at each side, to watch the competition. There's only me tonight, so I'll try my best. On guard, gentlemen. Are you ready? Fence. Halt. As the attack came in from the left, it was a feint attack, it didn't land, an attack from my left came in and hit the right. Against my right, 1-1-0. On guard, gentlemen. Are you ready? Yes. Fence. Halt. There was a feint to my right flank, sorry, and then came over the top and hit him on the left. Against the left, 1-1-0. On guard, you ready? Fence. Halt. Straight through attack, through the guard, against my right, onto his head. On guard, gentlemen. You ready? Halt. That attack is known as a flèche or the arrow and comes with the attacking fencer off balance, in this case, all the way through. Score is now 2-all. On guard. You ready? Fence. Now you know why we wear masks. Halt. The attack was coming from my right, but it came in with a bent arm, into which the fencer on my left launched a straight arm attack, which hit the fencer on the right. Against my right, the left wins. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the fencing display.
The next demonstration will be given by members of the Gosport Karate Kyokushinkai Club. The club trains at St Vincent in Gosport and is run by Dave Toms, who is a first Dan. Over 50% of the club members are naval personnel. In fact, the instructor recently finished MEX course in Collingwood, and several more are still here trying. The Lady Brown Belt is a dental hygienist presently serving in HMS Dolphin. Kyokushinkai is a very strong, hard style of karate, which was developed from several other styles by Kancho Mas-Oyama, the 10th Dan, after the war. After a period of isolation on a mountain, he descended to demonstrate the power of his new karate by fighting and killing a 1,000-pound bull. He has been credited with fighting over 40 bulls while spreading Kyokushinkai training through Japan and the USA. It arrived in the UK through Bob Bolton and Shihan Steve Arniel in 1964. Shihan Arniel is now a 7th Dan. He's responsible for all senior gradings in the country and also for the Gosport Club gradings at 3 monthly intervals. We hope you enjoy the display, and if you wish to ask any questions, please ask during the interval. And for commentary during the display, I'll now hand you over to Mark Lowe.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Gosport Karate Kyokushinkai Club's display. In some of the short time available, we would like to show you some of the basics of our style, and also the more visual aspects, such as knockdown fighting and breaking techniques. The British Karate Kyokushinkai have a strict syllabus and grading system, from 10th Q, white belt, to 4th Dan, black belt. You will now see the club members demonstrating all the techniques, that is kicks, blocks and punches, which are required to be learnt by the student for the first white belt grading. You will notice the characteristic karate yell, known as a ki-ai. This helps to develop the power and the focus of a technique. Think of a weightlifter. He does exactly the same shout as he lifts. The students will now demonstrate a kata, which is a pre-arranged series of blocks and punches on the move. There are 15 katas in the Kyokushinkai syllabus. This is the first one, known as Taikyoku Sono Ich. It consists of 20 moves in an H shape and gets the student used to moving while blocking and punching. Done correctly, the kata should take about 24 seconds. As a complete contrast, the students will now demonstrate a very slow kata. This is known as sanchin. The first thing you will have noticed are the strange noises. This is called ibuki breathing, and is a special way of forcing the air from the lungs using the diaphragm. The whole kata may look very easygoing and slow, but in actual fact every punch is done with dynamic tension, so the student is working very hard indeed. As the kata takes over 2 minutes to perform, it can get very strenuous. Throughout the kata, the feet remain in a very stable stance known as sanchin, hence the name of the kata. Another interesting point to note is that the kata starts and finishes with a period of meditation. The lower grades will now sit down while the higher grades show you the final kata tonight. This is known as ski no kata. It develops punches and stances. The word ski is Japanese for punch, hence it is a punching kata, incorporating various arm techniques used in syllabus up to 3rd kyu. All the katas you have seen contained aspects of self-defense which may not be apparent to the student, but are revealed at black and brown belt training and the applications shown. The next demonstration is of Tamishiwari, wood breaking. This is being done here and now for a fight, full contact, and is done in all full contact fights. It can get very important in deciding who may win a competition at later stages. Before every competition, a fighter has to break wood to show he has the power to compete. Depending on how many pieces he breaks eventually, may show how well he'll do in the fight. The 2 students involved in the fight will be fighting hard. Not as hard as they would be in a competition fight, though. The only protection they may wear is a groin box and shin pads. The rules state that you must not attack the face with any hand technique. However, you may kick to the head, as a kick is slower. It is the most realistic form of karate combat which exists, as the punches are all real and not pulled. Surprisingly, the incidence of injury is very low in this type of fighting, due to the fact that the contestants have to be very physically fit before they enter a competition. They must also be very high grade and over 18 years old to compete. The fight will continue for 2 whole minutes unless one man escapes from the arena or is knocked down. If the fighter regains his feet before 5 seconds, his opponent is awarded half a point. If he takes over 5 seconds, a full point is awarded. Then the fight is over. If the match is drawn after 2 minutes, an immediate 2-minute extension starts. It is now that the past training and stamina tell. If after all this a draw still exists, then the breaking of wood will decide the competition. He who broke the most wood will win. The students will now all demonstrate Tamishawari, trial by strength. This is designed so a student who has spent some time doing nothing else but punching fresh air can assess the power of his own body. You will see various items being broken with a fist, hand, elbow, foot, and even head. It must be emphasized that there is no disgrace in failing to break. On the contrary, it just indicates to the student that he or she has not yet reached a sufficient level of training. On attempting a black belt grading, a student must demonstrate 2 breaks to the BKK, British Karate Kyokushinkai, grading examiner. The white belt students will only have been studying Kyokushinkai for a couple of months, and they're already breaking wood. The club instructor will now attempt 2 breaks. The first will be 2 inches of burning wood, a psychologically difficult rather than physically difficult break, using the 2-knuckle fist punch. The second attempt will be a normal house brick, using the base of the fist to break. You will now see the two brown belts attempting to break a large stack of normal roofing tiles. The first student will use shuto, knife hand. The second student will use a knuckle fist. The reason for the cloth on the tiles is to protect everyone from small flying pieces of tile. The final demonstration will show how the body can be strengthened. As you will see, one of the students, a young lady, lies across the backs of two other students like a trestle. This shows the strength of her stomach muscles. The instructor will now attempt to break a pile of roofing tiles placed on her stomach, using his head to strike them. Very difficult for all involved. This concludes our demonstration, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you've enjoyed a small insight into a vast sporting concept. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave Toms, Mark Lowe and the Gosport Kyokushinkai Karate Club. That ends the first half of this evening's demonstrations. There will now be an interval of approximately a quarter of an hour, during which you can get refreshments at the back of the theatre. The Portsmouth Command and HMS Collingwood Judo Clubs and the Junior Judo Club. And I'll hand you over to the man who is going to correct the wrong statement that I understand I just made, Lieutenant Commander Brian Wheeler.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. To start the second half of the martial arts demonstration, we have this evening 12 members of HMS Collingwood's Judo Club. I'm afraid we're not using the juniors tonight, as the commentator has just said. These are, believe it or not, adults. Right? Now, judo, unlike the sports apart from fencing, which you've already seen, is a sport and makes no pretense to be self-defense whatsoever. And I emphasize that judo is a modern Olympic combat sport. And this evening we will demonstrate throws, the methods of winning a judo competition, and a little something extra at the end. And the first thing the team will demonstrate are break falls. This is a very important aspect of the judo player's repertoire, because the name of the game is to throw your opponent on his back with speed. If, of course, he's not used to falling on his back, he will be quite badly injured. At the very best, he'll be sick, and this makes the mat slippery for the other players. Notice just before the back hits the ground, the player smacks the ground with his hand, and this takes the sting out of the throw. Judo throws are very powerful as we use this clothing to act as leverage, as you'll see in a minute. One of the important things about judo, as people such as Brian Jacks and David Starbrook and Neil Adams have proved to us, is physical fitness. This is a very important aspect, and any judo player who wishes to be successful must be very fit. And every Tuesday and Wednesday evening in the Collingwood Judo Club, feverish circuit training takes place before we actually get to grips with each other on the judo mat. Mate. We shall start the demonstration proper by showing you some judo throws. And the way we'll do this is the two players in the middle of the mat will demonstrate the throws twice at slow speed, and when they have finished, the players around the outside will do the same technique at the sort of speed you can expect to see in a judo contest. And the first throw we'll demonstrate is Ippon Seoinage, or the full point shoulder throw. This is the classic judo throw where the attacker throws the defender right over his shoulder. He comes in low, crouches, tucks in underneath, and then throws his opponent on his back. That's the sort of speed we'll see later when we demonstrate competition. The next throw is Harai Goshi, the sweeping hip throw. This is a different throw. It's one of the hip techniques. Notice this time the attacker gets his hips in low and then sweeps back with the right leg so the back of his thigh contacts with the front of his opponent's thigh. The next throw is very similar to the last one, the Harai Tsurukomi Goshi. This time, this is another hip technique, but the attacker lifts and pulls the opponent by using his arm. Note the way he lifts the arm up in the air, hips in, pulls him, and sweeps with the leg as well. Quite a difficult movement, this. Jimmy. Now, one of my favourites, Kata Guruma. This is a very powerful throw, a bit like the English fireman's lift, where you get right underneath your opponent, lift him up on your shoulders, and then throw him across both shoulders, once again to land on his back from a fair distance above the ground. Jimmy. The next throw is a different one altogether, Utsuri Goshi. This is a counter technique. Notice this time the attacker comes in, he's lifted up, twisted, and thrown by the defender. Once again, slowly. Again, quite a difficult technique. Got to do this very quickly if it's to be successful. Jimmy. And finally, the stomach throw, which I think most people have seen in various films. Right underneath the opponent, foot in the stomach, wheel him over your head like that to land on the floor behind your head. Jimmy. To score in judo, he must land with more than 80% of his back on the floor, and he must land with speed and force. Now, that's the way to win if you're fighting standing up, to try and throw your opponent on his back, as I've just explained. But, of course, this doesn't always happen, and you will fight down on the ground. On the floor, you can win by wrestling your opponent and holding him under your control for 30 seconds. Trapping one limb of the upper body, controlling your opponent underneath you for 30 seconds, and you've won the competition. The players around the outside will do this, but they will throw their opponent to the ground first. Mate. Another way of winning on the ground is to obtain a submission. And there are two ways of doing this. One is to lock his arms, so that if he didn't submit by tapping twice, the arm would break at the elbow joint. All arm locks are applied to the elbow joint. Players around the outside will now show you how this can be done with speed. Jimmy. If any of you ever had the privilege of seeing somebody like Neil Adams, who will be representing Great Britain in the next Olympic Games, he can actually do this arm lock before the player he's thrown has hit the ground. And the final way of winning on the floor is by strangling or choking your partner into submission. The same submission, tapping twice. This one, the kata hajime. He compresses the opponent's windpipe. This stops him breathing, and he eventually suffocates. Jimmy. That concludes the demonstration of how we do it. Another method of judo practice is known as the randori. Now, in this particular practice, the two players in the middle are throwing each other with no resistance. They're not exactly helping each other, and this is in no way rehearsed. They are just trying judo techniques on each other, and neither man is resisting the other. This is a good way to practice coming in fast, because if you're going to be good at judo, you've got to be very fast, and this is one way of practicing speed. It also keeps you very fit. Mate. It is not, of course, contest judo, which you'll see in a minute, when two players are actually trying to beat each other. But once again, randori from these two in the middle. Notice the throws are very powerful, and in most cases you will land on top of your attacker, so doubling the force as he hits the ground. Mate. Right, the next thing on the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, is competition. This is the ultimate in judo, to fight somebody else who is trying to beat you. This is not rehearsed, and both men will use maximum effort to beat each other. The particular competition you're going to see demonstrated now is the line-up. This is a very good way of getting fit, and it is also a requirement for your Dan grade. A word or two about the grades. You'll see we have a complete cross-section here, from white belt through to black belt. The grade order is white, yellow, orange, green, blue, brown and black. And there are 2 grades in each belt up to the Dan grade. The black belt tonight, Petty Officer John Thacker, has actually just been awarded his first Dan grade, so hopefully he shouldn't find that crowd over there too difficult. But of course anything can happen, and remember he has to throw each one on their back with speed or get them to submit on the floor. Right? Jimmy. Now he would normally have scored, Ippon! He would normally have scored a half a point with that throw because there wasn't enough force behind it to get the full point, but he has caused the player to submit, so he is now 1-0 up. Jimmy. The Japanese word for full point is ippon, and once you've done that, you know you've won the competition. Tsukumi. Now he has to hold him down there for 30 seconds or get him to submit. He's trying to put an arm lock on. If he can get that elbow across his thigh and ippon. Once he's done that, the player underneath submitted. Believe me, if he didn't submit, the arm would break. It is quite simple to break an arm when it is being bent the wrong way. Jimmy. Ippon. Very nice throw, that. Jimmy. Ippon. Nice strangle there. He's certainly trying every technique, and he is being quite successful. None of this has been rehearsed, I do assure you. Jimmy. He's finding this one a bit harder, and he is, of course, much tireder now. He's already done 4. Nearly scored. Now he's being held down by the brown belt, but he's out, and he's got the brown belt. If you keep him there for 30 seconds, he's won. Ippon strangled him. Right, 5-0. Right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the judo display, but I did say at the beginning that judo made no pretense at being self-defense. But of course, if you turn up to a judo club regularly, twice a week, and you practice fighting with somebody else, you will get used to that sort of situation, a bit like a boxer. So just to wind up our display this evening, the lovely Julie is going to demonstrate some self-defense for us using judo techniques. And we imagine Julie has had a hard day at the office, and here she is at the bus stop waiting for them. And from the other side of the road, out of Fratton Park, come these two. A situation all too familiar these days, I'm afraid. She gets pushed around, and these brave young men rush off with her handbag. Boosh! What a terrible business. She has, of course, now been to HMS Collingwood's judo club for at least a year. And once again, coming out of the office, she gets back to the same old bus stop, and guess what? The same two characters coming from the other side of the road this time, and they don't realise what she's been doing in the intervening period. Smash it. Lovely little foul to finish it off. Out you go. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes HMS Collingwood's judo display. Ray.
Beauty has beaten the beast. That was judo, the modern sporting descendant of jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is the next martial art to be demonstrated, and this was the martial art which was the secret of the samurai warrior class in Japan and was codified some 450 years ago. And for this display, I hand you over to Mr. Bill Heffer, who was the originator of the Zen Jiu-Jitsu style.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hang on. Good evening. The mic, it's me. Though I originated this particular style of jiu-jitsu we do, I didn't originate the first thing. What I would like to say is that I'd like to congratulate Lieutenant Commander Wheeler and his Goshin Jitsu at the end. Though he called it a form of judo, it's really jiu-jitsu he's doing. Very good as well. The young lady can come along and join us anytime she likes. Now, with ourselves, we don't practice showpieces. We're not showmen. We just do things to enjoy ourselves in our groups. We have groups all over the country, clubs, and we get together from time to time just for the fun and enjoyment. At no time do we practice to come out and do shows for the public. So what you will see tonight is straight off the cuff. There's no messing about. Nobody really gets trained to do shows, though Sean, the second one along, and I have put together a few little bits and pieces of different katas, where you've seen karate do kata work tonight, and probably you might see the same thing in a different form when Aikido comes on. Well, we thought you would have got fed up with seeing people walking up and down doing katas, so we left them out, but what we done is took little bits from different ones and put them together, which we'll try and give you a demonstration on later. Probably make a right muck-up of it, because we just join things together as we go along. That's what the jiu-jitsu arts are. They're a little bit of what you see as karate, a little bit of judo, a little bit of Aikido, and to our Kung Fu friends here tonight, very much a lot of that as well. So we are what was the origination of the arts. The rest are all Do arts that came out, and as you was told about judo as a sport, that's where judo came out of the art we practice. So did karate, as a matter of fact, and for the Kung Fu boys, they came out of the same Chinese arts called Chinan arts, which were the Chinese form of jiu-jitsu. So less talking from me, because there is no need to do a lot of talking. You've been told all about it tonight. Let's get in and just show you roughly what we do, because I will have to go on the mat with them to work with them, to tell them when to stop, when you've had enough. Thank you. Right. Let's have the boys. Are you staying in? No, you step back out. You two come forward. I told you this was off the cuff. We don't practice shows and have no intentions to. Right, we do a small kata of blocks. Unlike karate, you walk up and down practicing them. We don't find we have the time to do this in the jiu-jitsu arts. There's so much to learn. So the kata of blocks are just punching and holding blocks straight off the cuff. Ready? Thank you. Most people do this at their own leisurely pace. There is no force field on it. As long as they know those blocks, they are all part of iron takes, locks, and to block for punching, as you see with karate earlier. I'd like now to put the two young Kodans together, which are junior black belts, and ask them to perform for us a demonstration of what they know. If you two step back, please. Right, thank you, lads. As you see, it is off the cuff. Thank you. Right, I'll ask the two young brain belts. Incidentally, the one with the two black tabs on actually is a Kodan himself. He got his grade last Sunday, so he hasn't got a belt to wear yet. What a shame. Come out, please. You'll probably see a very much similar thing. That's all we practice, is the same things over and over again, incorporating as much of knowledge as we can out of the arts. More relaxed than judo. Judo is a sport, as you were told, and of course a lot of power of aggression goes in to stop the other man from throwing you. With us, we're not interested in being thrown. We work for the benefit of learning to standardize ourselves within the movements. Thank you. Right, for a minute I've got another two young lads for you to have a look at. They fight a little bit different. In the jiu-jitsu arts, you take a man and start trying to build him up in the thing that he can do reasonably well. These two have only been with me a little time. They've done very well in their gradings up to now. Let's have a look and see how they use themselves. Remember, these are kiddies and they're bound to be full of nerves in front of you. I know I am, so why should they be any different? Thank you. I looked out earlier when karate was on, and I actually see some of the audience saying to themselves, God, I could have painted him in the face. Look, he was bang open there. So can these guys paint one another in the face, but we don't do it. We have a great respect for one another. They can hit one another, they can hurt, they can lay one another out, I can assure you. They know it. They don't have to push themselves to prove it. Well, we've now gone through some youngsters. Let's have a look and see what our two young ladies do. Again, I think they had a chat on some idea of what they were going to do last Friday in the club, and that's about it. And so I shan't know what they're doing no more than you. Probably turn me back and walk out or something. Thank you. I'd like to ask Bruce to come on now. I know he's going to do a little bit with the two lads, so we'll see what it is. I keep telling Sean to get his pyjamas short, and he never does. See, we're not all soft. Of course, if you really look at this is what happens to fights in the street. They don't stand up 6 foot away from one another and pull funny faces. They really do get stuck in. Anybody's seen a fight, or in my case, I've had to try and stop fights at some time or the other in the street. Thank you. Right, we're going to upset Lieutenant Commander Wheeler now, because though we don't practice judo, we do use the throws from judo, and sometimes we go out and do a little competition. Well, I'm not going to shed 8 points and all that. We'll just let the lads freely show you a randori within it from our side of what we believe. Incidentally, our judo doesn't come out of the British Judo Association, it comes out of the British Judo Council, which is slightly different, very much the same, perhaps a little softer than the British Judo Association in practice. If you'd like to come out, please. With BJC Judo, a lot of it is to try and get styling within the work. Most of the method, unlike the British Judo Association, which is over-the-top straight line power, we work in a circular method if you're teaching judo. They both work very well. I think as far as judo as a sport's concerned, one of the greatest coaches in the country, Gleason, put very much circular method into his driving actions of group method teaching in the past, which is no doubt lifted the Olympic teams. Yeah, all right, thank you, lads. Right, there's just two more things to see, and that's I'm going out with Sean just to try and give you just a couple of minutes of work, and then our young Kodan is going to come out and do just one little thing on his own at the end, and that'll be it. So if you'll bear with us, I'll see if I can make a load of mistakes. What a load of rubbish. Right, young boy, he's been with me a long time, he's a lovely lad. Cried his eyes out for about 3 months. He's never done it since. But off he goes, let's see what he can do with a sword. He made a poo, but he tried to put it in the wrong way round. Right, I've taken up a little bit too much of your time. They keep giving me dirty looks over on the toe. Don't look at them. And it's like the comedian who gets on the stage. You don't take no notice till he wants to go. But I hope you've enjoyed it. It's off the cuff. Any of the lads who do the arts are most welcome to come along if they feel they're that good. They'd like a little bit of practice with them. Most welcome to come along to the club any night. We don't charge them membership. They can come in free of charge for a couple of visits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bill Heffer, 5th Dan instructor and the Portsmouth Jiu-Jitsu Club. The next martial art on the programme is Aikido, under the charge of Mr. Dave Ayres, 4th Dan instructor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Aikido we're going to show you tonight is traditional Aikido. Aikido differs in most other martial arts in that the object is not to maim, injure, or particularly damage an opponent. Our training style is such that one agrees to be thrown and one agrees to attack, and then the situation is reversed. There are many styles of Aikido in the world today. The style we practice is called the Yoshinkan style. This is basically the style of the founder, Master Ueshiba, when he was a younger man. And as he got older in years, his style incorporated much more philosophy, and so the style became quite gentle. Now, our program tonight is specifically designed to show you exactly what Aikido is as near as we can in this short space of time. When a beginner first comes to our club, the first thing he has to learn to do is to stand on a basic posture, or kamae. This posture is known, or was known as the Japanese immovable posture. It comes from the days of holding the Japanese two-handed sword. It gives great stability, and the person practicing this posture can move rapidly in any direction. From here, a student learns how to move his posture with great strength, particularly in this case when he's pulled forward. The idea is to gain stability of movement all the way through. It's very easy to appear or feel strong when you're static, but you must do the same thing even under fast multiple attack. The second principle of Aikido is to learn that when you're pushed, your body must turn away or to avoid a very strong ongoing attack. Having understood this, he then starts to learn the power of hiriki. Hiriki is the power developed from lifting the Japanese sword above the head. If you can imagine two guys in armour fighting, the power to lift and cut is very, very important. And then he learns it in the negative form, turning away. He then learns the move of Shumatsu, which is the four-direction cut. And the same move in the negative form. Thank you, Dan. These sets of movements are practiced throughout the life of the Aikidoists. They must never, ever be neglected. And if you go to our headquarters dojo in Japan, the first 2 hours of practice are Kihon Doza, or basic kata. They are considered an essential part of any martial art. I'd now like to ask two of our green belt junior instructors to come out and demonstrate the principles of that kata involved with a series of movements. I might add at this stage that nobody is allowed to teach in our system unless they hold an instructor's license, regardless of grade. These techniques are practiced in almost kata form. The object is not speed, but to understand completely the principles of Aikido. As you can see all the way through this demonstration, balance and stability are very, very important. After several months of practice, the student then starts to learn circular movement. Circular movement is the essence of Aikido, and in fact many of the martial arts. When an attack is directed at you, the first thing to do is to avoid the attack, to reach the speed of the attack, normally with circular movement. Then the attack is channeled into a circuit of neutralization, as we call it, and then the total power of the attack is given back to the attacker. And so the practitioner need use no energy at all. Tracy and Jim demonstrate. As you reach towards Dango Raid and beyond, there are several principles of Aikido in practice, or advanced practice. One of these being Jiwaza, or freestyle. Now this could be one against 2, 3, 4, or many exponents. But tonight we have decided to demonstrate knife techniques. The first few techniques are done in kata form at speed, and then into freestyle knife practice. Gary Masters first dan, and Malcolm Crawford first dan. One of the important aspects of our style of Aikido is shuaryoaza. This word means kneeling techniques, or sitting in a formal manner. In the old days of the samurai, you had to learn how to defend yourself, because maybe a traitor would try and attack you. And as you appreciate, in the Oriental people kneel most of the time, particularly when eating. Mick Castle, third Dan on the left, and Darren, second Dan, will demonstrate some basic techniques and some freestyle in shuaryoaza. All the time you'll notice that a distance is kept between at this stage, and the eyes of the opponents never leave each other. This is called Zanshin awareness. Okay, that nearly concludes our demonstration, and now I would like to demonstrate one of the Jo cutters. The Jo is the short stave. It's an interesting point to note that one of the great swordsmen, Japanese swordsmen, who invented the art of Nito, which means two swords, the only time he was ever defeated in his life was against an opponent using the short stave. Cutter, as you've seen many times from our karate friends, is a very, very important part of any martial art training, because it is from these repetitive movements that the body understands, not the mind. Because in speed combat, you don't have time to think. It is the body that must react. So this is one of the cutters of Aikido. Thank you.
That was Davies, fourth Dan instructor, and his Aikido club. And now the final demonstration this evening is of Kung Fu, which differs from the other Eastern martial arts you've seen tonight by being of Chinese origin rather than Japanese. The general title of several different forms of martial art. There are over 300 forms, and the form we are to see tonight is the so-called Kung Fu Lao Ga. And in charge is Mr. Richard Lockwood, and to do the commentary is Mr. Jed Kerslake here from HMS Collingwood. He's busy doing maths at the moment.
Lục Jin, Kin La. Unfortunately tonight, the Chief Instructor for the South Coast, Mr Humphrey Brooms, cannot be with us because he's fighting for the British team in Paris, a semi-contact competition. Firstly, we'd like to demonstrate basic blocking and countering techniques, followed shortly with further techniques using the same attack. Look Jin, Yubei, John Chimpo, Summer, Yubei, John Chimpo, Summer, Kimla, face to front, Kimla. Two members of our Waterlooville Club will now demonstrate sets or forms from the Laugar syllabus. Firstly, Far Kyun, flower fist, followed by Laugar Lup Hook Kyun, fist of 6 coordinations. Due to the successful rise of Laugar on the south coast, regular semi-contact tournaments are held, with the teams winning major national competitions. The purpose of these tournaments are to use the punching and kicking skills over a 2-minute duration to score points with clear, controlled techniques. The scoring is as follows. 3 points a kick to the head, 2 points kick to the body, 1 point punch to the body. Pads are used for extra protection for both fighters. 2 of the local fighters will now give a display of semi-contact.
One point. Fight!